And it's just so encouraging to be able to look back on a season like that and then be able to pinpoint all these ways that God was literally so intentionally allowing you to experience certain things that were going to be so useful for the next chapter to prepare us for what's coming next.
Hey, I'm Andrea Olson. I've been leading worship and training worship leaders for nearly 20 years, and my mission is to support worship leaders just like you in volunteer-supported ministries because I know what it's like. I've been there. It's amazing, but you have a big job, and sometimes you might feel a little bit alone. But I'm here to remind you that you aren't. We'll cover spiritual and leadership growth, practical resources, and get encouragement from other worship leaders from all over the world. I truly want to see you lead from the overflow, not the overwhelm. So grab a cup of tea or coffee and join me. Welcome to the Overflow Worship Podcast. Hey, before we get started with today's episode, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for joining us on this journey and being a part of the Overflow Worship Podcast family. As a token of my gratitude, I want to give you a free gift, and I hope that it will inspire and encourage you on your journey. I am so excited to share with you the Healthy Team Toolkit that includes my top 5 tips for a healthy team, plus a brand new 5-week devotional series to help you and your team grow together while taking some of the weight off your shoulders because we've done the prep work. Because we know that this calling to worship ministry is about so much more than making music. Week by week, this toolkit and devotional will guide you and your team through the essentials of private worship, relationship building, and servant leadership as you all work together to steward the atmosphere of worship in your church. So if you're ready to transform your team, sign up today for this completely free, amazing journey at overflowworship.com/healthy-team. If you want to get this totally free 5-week devotional and healthy team toolkit, just head on over to overflowworship.com/healthy-team. Well, I'm really excited today because I have a special guest with me and we go way back. We were just chatting briefly before we hit record. It's kind of hard to believe how long it has been since we first started to get to know one another, but I'm really excited to welcome Shelly Johnson to the podcast today. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Same. So for people who've been listening to the podcast for a while, they've heard from you before, but for those who haven't, or those who were not in the early days of the Overflow Worship Conference and got to meet you in person, will you just tell everybody a little bit about you and where God has you today?
Yeah, so I am in the Atlanta, Georgia area. I was born and raised North Atlanta, and then lived in Nashville, Tennessee for about 8 years, went to college there, went to Belmont University, studied music there, and then spent several years after college just kind of networking and meeting a lot of people in the ministry world and the Christian music industry and doing a lot of different things there. And then in 2011, my husband and I moved back to the Atlanta area because of his job. We got transferred back here and then have just been serving in the local church, on staff at various churches, but also as an artist, traveling and doing ministry as an artist as well, and writing songs and leading worship. And the last 8 years being a mom. I have 2 kids, a daughter who's 8, which I can't believe because I think the first event I came up to Minnesota to do something with Andrea, I think she was like 8 weeks old or brand new. And so yes. I can't believe that she's 8 years old. That's crazy. And then I have a son who is 4. So we're in the really sweet, fun, still feeling like the little years of parenting. And it's just really fun. I love this season with my kids. So it's modern day sort of what we're doing now. I'm actually in the process of helping launch a brand new church this Sunday, October 15th. So by the time the listeners hear this, we might be after that. So this coming Sunday, October 15th is our first service. And so I've never gotten to be part of launching a church before. And I'm very, very excited about it. Just the opportunity to get to be a part of God birthing a brand new church and just thinking about all of the life change that's going to happen over the years and just all the things that God is going to do and getting to witness the very first ever gathering. just feels very special and very holy and just very monumental. So I just have a lot of expectation and excitement in my heart for what that's going to be like. So that's kind of just what's on the immediate horizon and sort of where we are at the moment. So.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. I'm excited for you guys. So are you are you on staff? Are you leading worship, or what does your role look like in this new church?
Yes. So I am the worship leader, worship pastor. And so I'm the first. So the church it's through a network of churches called Local Church. And there's kind of the main campus is about 30 minutes north of where I am here in the North Atlanta area. And it's a large church up there. And they have this vision for planting 20 churches in the next 10 years. And so it's not like a campus model where they would all be campuses. It's truly a church planting model. And so the main church, Local Church Forsyth, is really operating as a resource church to just be there to help these churches get off the ground. And then, once they're, self-sufficient, then they're operating just, as a brand new church. And so, it's a really cool model, just having them to help and look to them for resources and different things. So this is actually the first church of that vision of they call it the 20 and 10 vision of planting 20 churches in 10 years. So this church, which is going to be called Local Church Milton, Milton is the community where we live. This is the first one of that vision. So we're kind of the paving the trail, or as we say, of, sort of the guinea pigs of the first one. So hopefully it will go well. So, but yeah, so it's an exciting vision, and the team at the local. The main campus, they've been just absolutely wonderful to help us get going. And it's just been a really healthy, life-giving environment to be a part of. So I'm really excited to see what the Lord is going to do with it.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. Wow. So as you were talking, I thought of a question for you, and I just have to make a side comment though for our listeners and for you, Shelly. I apologize if you guys hear like crashing and thuds and whatever. We have construction happening. And of course today is like the loudest day of them all. So forgive the noises. Everything's fine. There's just hammers and nail guns. And such close by. But so a lot of our listeners, and one of the ways that Overflow has grown and developed over the last few years is a lot of people that we serve are new or newly positioned in their ministry. And so I was wondering, because you are an experienced worship leader, you've led in big churches and all the way to, now starting a new church plant. So what was different in, like, I know you're just like going to come up on your first Sunday, but in the planning process and leading up to it, right? Like, what has been different for you in this kind of brand new church plant with no maybe systems in place yet for this church versus, maybe other experiences that you had? Because I think that might be helpful for some people who are in that spot, to things to maybe look out for.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's definitely something I've been thinking about and noticing these last few weeks. Because as I said, I've never done this before, meaning I've never been a part of a church from ground zero and beyond. And so I think it's been fascinating. As Andrea said, I have served on staff at some really large churches where they were very well established and had huge staffs, huge teams, huge production, all the things. And then, this past year I have served as an interim at a smaller church that was meeting in a school. And so it has been interesting to sort of experience all the different spectrums in between those two extremes. But I think what I've really enjoyed about this process is just the relational, because when you're building something from scratch, it's all about the relationships with the team, because you can't do anything without people. The church is the people. So you can't build a church, plan a church, start a church without having some really beautiful established relationships with the people that are going to help start this church. And so I think probably my favorite part of this process so far has been what's called launch team meetings, which the lead pastor, his name is Ben. He moved here from Birmingham, Alabama, and he's planted a church before. He planted a church about 25 years ago in East Georgia that was very successful. It was a really healthy church, and it's still a healthy, thriving church today. And so he's done this before, and so he has experience in how to plant a church. But one of the things that he implemented from the beginning was establishing a launch team. And so we had, interest meetings, and then really finding the people who wanted to be part of helping this church start. And so that became the launch team. Those people comprised the launch team. And so every Wednesday night for the last couple months or 3 months, we've been meeting every Wednesday night in different people's houses, different, outdoor pavilions at playgrounds, just different places we've been meeting and just really praying together, opening God's word together, and then dreaming together of what can this look like. And then really having the logistical conversations of, as we've gotten closer to launch, like, okay, who's doing what? Who's going to head up kids? Who's going to head up the logistics? Who's going to head up load and unload? Who's going to do hospitality, and just all the different areas that you need to have in order to really open the doors of a church. And so just getting to see all of that and getting to know people on a personal level, getting to break bread together and share meals together, because it's one thing when you're kind of in work mode and you're just in get it done mode and you're just trying to blast through a to-do list or figure out logistics. It's a different mental space than when you're just sitting around a table relaxed and you're just having a meal together. You're getting to know people. You're getting to hear their story. And all of that foundation is so important to starting a church, because if you don't know the people that you're working with and you're serving with, it's just not going to be as effective. And I think we all are going to work together so much better and so much easier because of the relationships that we've been able to build with each other here these last few months. And so that's been probably the most rewarding part for me thus far. And one of the things that I've loved about what Ben, our lead pastor, has brought to this is something called a 5-minute faith story. So at every launch team meeting, he's asked a different person each week to share with the group their 5-minute faith story, which is basically a summary of how they met Jesus and how they ended up in this spot of wanting to be part of planting a church. And so that's been just so beautiful to hear just all the stories, like the things that people have been through, the ways that they found Jesus and how they came to know the Lord and deepen their faith, and just what brought them to being at this place. And I think it just it's really exciting, because I think, you realize, like, just among the launch team, which is a group of about 20 to 25 people, just the vast differences in people's journeys and the vast different faith backgrounds, religious backgrounds, denomination backgrounds. Like, people are coming at this from so many different backgrounds. And I think it's just been such a reminder of that's just a small group of 20 to 25 people. So just imagine, like, in a church, when you have 100, 250, 200 people, just imagine, like, that just multiplies, And so I think it's given me a perspective, even as a worship leader, just when I'm sharing from the platform or setting up a song or sharing something, like being mindful of not assuming that everyone in the room is just automatically understanding the context from which I'm sharing, because everyone has a different backstory. And so it's just been a really good reminder of just how diverse the family of God really is. And especially nowadays with everything going on, and just the desire for unity and for the body of Christ to be unified, I think it's just exciting to think about. And so, it's just been like those little relational things that, maybe historically I might have always thought were the secondary things, but I think the longer I serve in the local church, I think I'm realizing the little things are really the biggest things of all, because they're really the foundational pieces that are going to establish whether or not your church is healthy or not. And I think just through some seasons that I've walked through in the last few years, just church health and the health of leadership and the health of people on the team is so, so, so important. So all of that just excites me for what lies ahead, just right around the corner.
Yeah. Well, and I love what you said about, first it's about relationship. And I think you're right. I think sometimes we forget about that because we're like, I got to do the thing. Like I have to get these things done and check these things off the list. But also, I think it's powerful for all of us to take a step back and have that holistic perspective, and that's what you have gotten being in this like planning from the ground up, which I think is such an incredible thing to get to experience, because then we're also working together with the other like teams in the church. It's not just like, well, here's worship and like, here's, the hospitality, and here it's like, you guys are starting from a spot of connection and togetherness and relationship. And I think that, when we walk into an already established organization, that's wonderful, but sometimes that's lost or forgotten. And so I love that, you highlighted that, because it's important for us, no matter where we're at in our journey. And, as you talk about beginning something new, obviously something new means a new chapter, which means that another chapter has closed, and that means transition, right? And that means that, all the good and all the hard that comes with that, and we have to navigate through that. And so I would love to spend just a little bit of time, hearing from you about what you've learned through your seasons of transition, in hopes to encourage probably a lot of people who are in that, because I think it's a really real thing for a lot of people in ministry right now.
Totally. Yes. It has definitely been a year of transition for my husband, Jack, and I. So really brief little nutshell summary. So my husband, Jack, employed at T-Mobile for 22 years. So half of his life, he started right out of college and started in an entry-level position and just had an amazing career and absolutely loved what he was doing. And at the time, up until last year, was literally living his dream, just in a dream job, leading a team and just thriving and flourishing in what he was doing. And then last April of 2022, he was very suddenly, out of the blue, laid off. T-Mobile's laying off thousands of people. It's just massive layoffs going on, and it's still going on this year. They did a whole nother round here recently. And so it's just been a very tumultuous season just in several companies, especially in the tech side of things and wireless side of things. And so all that to say, it was a huge shock to his system. He was not expecting it. And that's probably point number one about transition is very rarely are they expected. Transitions are usually imposed upon us, and many times it's not when we expect it or want it. And so, that really set us. So last April, just aside from the emotional blow that was for him to be laid off, because, 22 years at the same company, a lot of the people he worked with for 15, 16, 17, 20 years. And so this is like a family to him. These aren't it's not just a job. It's not just, coworkers. It's literally a family of people that he loved very, very much and loved him very much. And so it was a massive grief process to go through, and just, kind of a regrouping of what do I do now and what's happening now. And so it's been 18 months, and he may be close on a few things. He still has not landed his next thing. So that's been a whole nother thing. Just being unemployed for 18 months has been very hard. A lot of waiting, a lot of patience, a lot of just trusting the Lord. And, so that's been just from a personal side, just in our family, what we've been walking through. But then for me, from a ministry side, have also been through some transitions this past year. About the same time that Jack was laid off, I was invited to come on staff at a church as the executive worship pastor. And it seemed like a dream, role and just this amazing opportunity, and ended up going on staff, and just ended up being a very unhealthy place, and just a lot of things behind the curtain that I discovered once I got there. And I ended up resigning after only 6 months on staff, which was very unexpected and unforeseen. It was a place that I thought I would be for years and years and years, and our kids would grow up. And so that's a whole nother story, but that was enough. Suffice to say, it did not go the way that I expected. It was very evident why God called me there, and I do see that now. But at the time, it was very hard to walk into an environment that you think is going to be amazing. And then, you get there and you start to see things, and it's just very hard to have to be the one to sort of choose to walk away from that and to resign. And so that was a very painful season for me to go through. And it's hard to even really talk about that, just because I want to be really sensitive to, the church, and I don't want to, say anything disparaging in any way. And so just trying to even talk sensitively about it. But that journey ended in January for me. So I resigned in January. And then for the last 7 months, so from February to August or July, I was an interim worship pastor at another church that had reached out, who was going through a difficult time, and they just needed some help, just kind of somebody to help them, just sort of tie them over while they were in a season of transition, trying to figure things out. And so that ended up being a 6-month chapter at just such a sweet church, and it was so healing and so redemptive, and it was really a two-way street. I felt like they felt like I was able to help them, but I also felt like they helped me in so many ways. It was just such a beautiful church, and the pastor was wonderful and was just such a good shepherd to me after what I had just walked through. And so that church ended up closing in July. They had been through a lot years before I entered the picture. And so that was also a first for me, of getting to see a church close. It was a church plant planted 10 years ago, and just had a lot of things happen, and totally out of their control, and just so many things. And so it just kind of right around the time that church was deciding to close was sort of right around the time that this new church plant was, talking to me about wanting to hire me. And so it's really been a crazy, crazy year. Just really, really crazy. I mean, even sitting here trying to explain it all just sounds crazy. None of it was expected. None of it was foreseen. And so I think the first thing that stands out in my mind is just transition is not expected. And so I think the first lesson that I've learned through this is just, because I'm a planner, my DNA, my wiring, I love to know what's happening. I love to be prepared. I love to be organized. I love to just, try to be a good steward of time and resources and all the things. And so I think God has definitely reminded me this past year that is not king. I think it's so easy to, when you're wired that way, it's so easy to kind of lean on that and depend on that to feel at peace. Because the way that I am wired, I do feel more at peace when things are predictable and organized and planned. And I think I've realized this last year, the only thing that I can rely on is Jesus. And I don't have to know what things look like. I don't have to know what the future holds. And control is an illusion anyway. And so I think God has used this season in my life to break me of my love of control and my love of plans and my love of predictability. And it's almost like he's given me a new perspective of, I think it's changed me in ways where I've become a much more relaxed person. I've become a much more flexible person, because I've gotten to experience what it's like to just jump off into the unknown with God and not have any idea what's happening or what's coming or what it's going to look like. And, when I read the Bible, I see a lot of that with the people that God used. It was a lot of just walking by faith and, not understanding the circumstances and not being able to explain perfectly, oh, well, this is what this is, and this is how this is going to go. And, I think that takes all the fun out of it. And so it's just been exciting for me to get to experience God in that way. I think it's probably the first time in my life that it's been this just tumultuous as far as like life circumstances. And so I think it's definitely changed the way that I trust in the Lord. And it's changed the way that I view my faith, and just, it's allowed me to let go. And I think God has been wanting me to let go for a long time. And I've finally gotten to a place where I think I'm starting to get it, like what it looks like and what it feels like to really just let go and trust him. So yeah, I think, anytime I was talking to someone this morning who had been through a really hard time in her life, and this phrase popped in my mind, and it was the first time I had said it this way. I think that God uses these crazy seasons, these difficult seasons that we go through. It's almost like meat tenderizer on our heart, because until you go through stuff, you're just kind of going through life, and you just are the way you are. But then when you go through something like this, and it's like your heart becomes more tender and more moldable and more just tender to other people and more open, and you become less rigid and less set, in your own way of doing things, and you become just way more tender-hearted. And I think that that's something that the Lord wants all of us to have, is a tender and contrite heart towards Him and towards others. And so that's definitely been something that I've seen just start to change within me. I mean, I can feel it just in the way that I'm thinking now. And that doesn't mean that it's not still a challenge and it's not still a struggle, because I think we're always going to contend with our wiring a little bit, because it's hard to change, the way you've been your whole life. But I think it's just given me more of a freedom to just relax and say, I don't know. And even walking into this new church plant, it's exciting, and I feel so hopeful and excited, but there's just a freedom in, God, I trust you, and I'm not going to try to make anything happen or make anything work. It's all in God's hands, and whatever God wants to do, He's going to do. And I'm just going to be faithful and obedient. And I'm not going to try to pretend like I can control any kind of outcome, because we can't. And so there's something very freeing and peaceful in that kind of abandon. So those are probably the few things that stand out the most from this past year.
Yeah. Wow. It's such a process. Life is such a process, isn't it? And it's like the process of surrender. And I'm right there with you, Shelly. I like a spreadsheet and a schedule, and can you just point to the line item, please? Put it in its place. And I've just had to learn so much about surrender in this season of my life too. And it's hard. And I love what you said. It's like a meat tenderizer. That's so true. It really is. And, I think for anybody who's listening, it's like, I hope that it's an encouragement to them as it is to me hearing your story, because I'm just hearing the quick snapshot, right? But I also hear in the transition, the care of the Lord and the kindness of the Lord, right? As one chapter is closing, another one is opening, and as one closes, another's opening. And it's like he's moving in all of that. And so I think for all of us, as we walk through transition, it's just such a beautiful thing to hear from other people and hear their stories, and then to be reminded that that's where He is in our transitions too. He's walking with us in it.
Totally. Well, and I would just add to that too, just be encouraged and reminded that God never wastes anything. And I know we've heard that before, but I have never seen that more tangibly than I have this past year. And I can give a couple examples. So when I resigned from the church back in January, and then I stepped into this other church where I was their interim worship pastor and helping them out, they were meeting in a school auditorium, so they were having to set up and tear down from scratch every Sunday. There were, and all the dynamics that go with that. And, at the time, that was a season where I felt so lost, because I had just come out of that really painful season of ministry and just resigned and all of that. And so now I'm kind of helping this church out, but I don't know how long. I don't know where this is headed. I don't know what's coming next. And so it's just a very lost feeling. But then to be here and to be, having come on board with this brand new church plant, and we're going to be meeting in a school. And it's just even that, 6 months of being an interim at a church right before this, where they were meeting in a school, was such an amazing preparation for this new chapter now of planning this brand new church that's going to be meeting in a school. Because there was just so many lessons learned in those 6 months that are going to be so helpful as we step forward into this new season starting this Sunday. And so it's just such a reminder of God doesn't waste anything. And even the seasons where we feel lost and we just feel like we don't know what's happening and what because it has been a very disorienting year for us. And I think it's easy to think in those seasons that, God, have you forgotten about us? Like what's going on? You just feel lost. Lost is the best word I can think of. You can't find your bearings, and you don't know which way is up and which way is down and what you're supposed to be focusing on, and what you just feel completely lost. And it's just so encouraging to be able to look back on a season like that and then be able to pinpoint all these ways that God was literally so intentionally allowing you to experience certain things that were going to be so useful for the next chapter. And it just is such a beautiful picture of the intentionality in the heart of God, that we're never lost, because even when we feel lost, it's actually a preparation season, and he's using every single thing that we're doing in that lost wilderness to prepare us for what's coming next. And so, it's easy to say that when you're on the other side, but it's very hard to rest in that when you're in it. So for any of your listeners that are in a season where you just feel that way, I hope that encourages you to I would say just pay attention to your surroundings and just glean whatever you can from whatever it is that you are doing at the moment, and know that God's going to use every single bit of that in the next chapter that you walk into.
Yeah. Amen. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's a beautiful spot to wrap up our conversation for today. And I'm just really grateful that you took the time to share. Thank you for sharing your heart and your story and encouragement with our listeners. And I would love it if you would tell people where they can get in touch with you, whether it's social media or website or whatever, so that they can hear the music that you write. I mean, because I just knowing you for several years and following the music that you've been releasing, when you release music, the lyrics and the melodies are just so powerful. And I know that you have also released some powerful songs out of difficult seasons, right, in your life over the past several years. And they've been such an encouragement to so many people. And so I would love it if you could tell people where they can find you and get a hold of you.
Yeah. So my website is just ShellyEJohnson.com. So it's SHELLY and then middle initial E. It's very confusing. Everybody thinks it's EY. It's not. So it's just ShellyEJohnson.com. And then all my social media is just Shelly E. Johnson. And so, I would love to hear from anyone. And, so
awesome. And do you have Christmas stuff coming up, or was that last Christmas that you released new stuff?
I do. So I released a Christmas album in 2017, and so I've done a Christmas tour every year since then, which has been so much fun. I love Christmas. It's my favorite time of the year. So I am doing a couple, like 2 or 3 concerts this year, just with the new church plant. I couldn't be gone very many Sundays, so I'm just doing like a couple things this year that I'm really excited about. And then, I think kind of on the horizon as far as new music. I've been writing a lot of songs over the last few years about just my kids and my life, and just like, because I live so much in the worship world that I have this whole other collection of songs they've just been pouring out of me, just about being a mom and just my kids and just different things at different difficult seasons that we've walked through and different things. And so I'm actually releasing 2 brand new songs in January that I'm super excited about. So I'll be sharing more about that in the next couple months. But those are just like kind of an extension of my heart just for my kids. And I'm really excited to be able to share those with other parents. And I hope they can relate to that season of life, because that's definitely where I'm at the moment.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. That's so exciting. Well, thank you so much, Shelly, for being here today and for sharing with us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, to all of our listeners, thank you so much for listening today. And all of the links that Shelly referenced, we're going to put in the show notes for you as well, so that you can click it and get there really easily, and make sure that you're following her social media so that you can hear about those upcoming new songs. I know I'm going to be on the lookout. I can't wait. And hey, guys, if you enjoyed today's episode, would you please hit subscribe so that you never miss another one? And also, it really does help us when you leave reviews. If you would hop over to Apple Podcasts and take take like 10 seconds and just leave us a review. It helps us in two ways. Number one, to make sure that we're delivering you relevant content, but also number two, I can't really change it, but it's the algorithm and all the things, and it helps us reach more people. So we would love it if you would do that for us. And then don't forget, we've got a free gift for you. We've been running this for a while and it's going away soon. So if you haven't gotten it yet, head to overflowworship.com/setlist checklist to download my free setlist checklist. All right. Thanks, guys. That's all for today. We'll see you next time.